U.S. Coast Guard is searching for survivors after strikes on an alleged drug boat convoy, as questions grow over the human cost of Washington's expanding anti-narcotics campaign. On December 31st, the U.S. Coast Guard launched a search for survivors after U.S. military strikes hit suspected drug smuggling vessels, according to Reuters. The strikes targeted a convoy of suspected drug smuggling vessels in the Pacific on December 30th, in what officials described as part of a broader counter-narcotics mission. U.S. Southern Command said 3 vessels were hit during the initial engagement, which unfolded in international waters. U.S. Southern Command said, and I quote, "Joint Task Force Southern Spear conducted kinetic strikes against 3 narco-trafficking vessels traveling as a convoy. These vessels were operated by designated terrorist organizations in international waters. Intelligence confirmed the vessels were transiting along known narco-trafficking routes and had transferred narcotics between the 3 vessels prior to the strikes. 3 narco-terrorists aboard the first vessel were killed in the first engagement. The remaining narco-terrorists abandoned the other 2 vessels, jumping overboard and distancing themselves before follow-on engagements sank their respective vessels. Following the engagements, U.S. Southern Command immediately notified U.S. Coast Guard to activate the search and rescue system. U.S. Southern Command later confirmed another set of strikes on 2 additional vessels the same day, extending the operation. The second set of strikes on December 31st killed 5 people, according to U.S. Southern Command. A U.S. official told Reuters that 8 people abandoned their boats and remain missing after jumping into the sea. The Coast Guard deployed a C-130 aircraft to search for survivors over the vast Pacific area, Reuters reported. The Coast Guard said it is coordinating with ships operating in the area to support the rescue mission and widen the search grid. Officials said search operations are continuing despite uncertain survival conditions in open water, according to Reuters. U.S. officials said at least 6 people may have survived by jumping overboard before their vessels were destroyed. This is not the first time there have been survivors following U.S. strikes under Trump, with earlier cases prompting repatriations. In October, 2 survivors were repatriated after a similar U.S. strike on suspected drug boats, Reuters noted. Later that same month, a search was launched after another strike left a survivor missing somewhere at sea. Earlier, a controversy was sparked due to a double-tap strike that allegedly targeted survivors after an initial bombing. On September 2nd, the U.S. carried out a follow-up strike to kill survivors of the first bombing of a boat, drawing human rights concerns. The strikes are part of a broader U.S. anti-drug campaign that has been underway since September across maritime corridors. Since September, the U.S. has carried out over 30 strikes on suspected drug boats, according to figures cited by NPR. The campaign has killed at least 110 people across the Caribbean and the Eastern Pacific, NPR reported. The White House says the strikes aim to cut off illegal drug supply routes before narcotics reach U.S. shores. The latest sea strikes come a day after Trump boasted of hitting a Venezuelan dock area used for drug shipments. Trump called it a place where they load the boats up with drugs, and described a big blast of the site during his remarks.
Can you say anything more about the explosion in Venezuela that you mentioned in a radio interview? Did the military do that? Can you share any more details about that?
Well, it doesn't matter, but there was a major explosion in the dock area where they load the boats up with drugs. They load the boats up with drugs, so we hit all the boats, and now we hit the area. It's the implementation area. That's where they implement, and that is no longer around.
Is that the only strike that the U.S. has done?
I don't want to comment on that.
However, U.S. officials later told the Wall Street Journal that the CIA carried out the drone strike on that Venezuelan dock facility. The operation was described by CNN as the first known U.S. land strike inside Venezuela in recent years. A Wall Street Journal report suggested the CIA was unhappy about the exposure of its role in the strike and the public spotlight on covert action.